Staniel Clanyo, what is up? Happy Thursday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great week. Excited about today's show. We are going to do a deep dive into the economy, give you guys a real estate market update. How do things like GDP, inflation, mortgage interest rates, home starts, new home builder confidence, all these things, how do they affect you as buyers or sellers? So we're going to get into all of those charts. I'm excited to do that. Got some other news locally here in Cincinnati from one of the largest home builders that I want to share. But yeah, feel free to check in. If you guys are watching today, let us know where you're watching from. As always, feel free to drop in any questions or comments in the chat. I love being able to interact with you on these YouTube lives. As I get started here, I want to do a big shout out to my man. Let me do this real quick. Shout out to my man, Garrett, who, if you've ever watched any of the videos on the channel, if you're part of the Staniel Clanyo and you subscribed, you've been watching videos from this guy, Garrett, who is my editor. He just got engaged. He proposed to his girlfriend in Japan, in right with Mount Fuji in the background. Look at this guy. She said yes. So here's, the happy couple. I hope, Garrett, you don't mind me sharing this, but super excited for them. Always glad to celebrate when a young couple is getting engaged. Beautiful photos here. Look how happy they are. So super excited to see that. Congrats to you, Garrett. So happy for you. Congrats on that. One other thing I wanted to point out here before we get going is YouTube sent me a thing. You guys see this thing in my background on my desk? Staniel Clanyo has reached 1 million views. Yeah. So YouTube sent me this sweet little cool neon sign in the mail. Wasn't expecting to see that, but always fun to get a little gift. And also just get some recognition for saying we've built a lot of great content here on the channel around real estate and living in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky. We hope to be the #1 channel here for a long, long time to come. Currently, we hold that mantle, but there are people gunning for us. You know who you are, Baron Group. I know you're watching right now. No, but it's good. There's room for great content to be made here to help more and more people understand what it's like living and moving to this area. So we love to do it. Alex, what is up? Quick question. How come no one wants to live downtown? 3 to 4 condos are priced similarly, but been on the market for 3+ months. It may be downtown. It may be the market we're seeing in general right now, Alex. I'm hearing this I had a lot of conversations with realtors this week who are saying my listings are sitting. They're sitting longer than usual. Days on market is going up. And so partially could be downtown, partially could be just, we're hitting a bit of a lull, so to speak, in the market. And so we certainly are seeing more and more listings sit. That's probably downtown. That's probably also in the burbs. So we're going to talk into why that is. We're going to get into all the data today. And thank you. Yes, 1 million views. I'm proud of that. So it's a good thing. This is our second week coming to you guys at kind of a Thursday lunchtime hour. So again, let us know if it works, but we'll get into the data. I want to be sure to be able to do these live so that you can jump in. I know probably in the middle of the workday is not ideal versus an evening, but I think it's better for me to do the videos than not do the videos. And you guys can jump in the comments later on if you're watching. If you can't watch the live stream, hopefully you can watch the replay and still get all the good data. So without further ado, let's jump in here. And we are going to talk market update. Now, this is coming, I'm just going to give a quick disclaimer. This is coming from the Keller Williams mega camp that just happened about a week or so down in Texas. And there's a disclaimer about all this data, so you guys can read this. Neither KW or blah, 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 blah is affiliated for liability or damages. So there's the disclaimer, but there's still some really great charts we're going to go through looking at the real estate market update for 2024, specifically the U.S. economy, and how does that impact you guys as buyers and sellers. So let's dive in. All right, #1 chart that I want to go over here is GDP. So this is dating all the way back to 1990. You can see ups and downs. You can see certain times when there have been recessions. What's predicted right now for this year's GDP is 2.5% growth year-over-year change, that's projected. So that's not totally fully for sure. You can see here's the dip when COVID hit. And then coming out of COVID, there was a big bang because everything opened back up. But really, we've kind of been in this range for several years now. Steady growth of GDP. I'm going to keep rolling quarterly, but this is a chart that I'm really kind of, whoops, let me do this one. Interested in showing you guys here. So if you can see this, this chart is saying, what is the recession probability? And if it's over, I believe the stat is if the number's over 65%, then it is highly or extremely likely that you are in or will be in a recession. And we got close to that in 2020, but right now where we're at is close up to over 70%. We hit our peak. So either this chart is saying we're either in a recession or we have or we're heading into one. So I'm curious, what do you guys feel? Is that something you're feeling? Does it feel like a recession to you? Again, a recession is negative GDP growth for back-to-back quarters. Alex, reason to live downtown, going to a Green Day concert and not having to deal with the traffic. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm actually heading down there tonight, Alex. I'll be down with the guys from the Growler podcast. So Paul Dehner Jr., Mark Shalafoo down at BetMGM today. I'm going to make an appearance down there. They've got a live show at the Nation Burger and BetMGM right down across from Great American Ballpark. And I know there's a Green Day concert tonight. Smashing Pumpkins are playing with them as well, I believe. And you've got a Bengals preseason game. So downtown is going to be hopping tonight. I'm going to be down there giving away a little bit of swag. So we might be giving away a few hats. We've got some Bengals schedule magnets to give away. Who doesn't want a Bengals schedule magnet for their fridge with their favorite realtor? So we're going to be down there for a little bit this afternoon. Be sure to stop by and say hi. Get some swag. We'd love to see it. All right, let's pop back into the chart here. So essentially, this chart is saying a recession is likely coming here. Whoops, pressing the wrong button. All right, let me get back into it. Okay. Unemployment, next chart here annually. So again, hit its high mark in 2020 and 80. If you go back to the recession of 08, 09, 10, you had unemployment up to 9.3, 9.6, 8.9%, then steadily came down. And it came down after COVID, 5.3. We're in this 3.6 range right now, projecting 3.6 to be here in 2024. Monthly, I'm not so interested in job openings. I'm going to keep rolling past that. Inflation. All right, let me make this a little bigger here for you guys to see. So looking at this chart of inflation, again, where we were at last year versus where we're projecting. So we hit a high of inflation of the CPI, including energy and food, back in 2021 of 7%. Following year looks like it was around 6%. Then 2023, you're looking at 3.4%. 2024 projecting around 2.7%. So it is coming down. I mean, inflation is coming down here, but if you add all that up, if you're kind of like, well, it doesn't feel like my prices are at 2.2%. Well, they're not. If you add 7 plus 6, it's 13, plus 3 is 19, plus another 3 is like 22. That feels more right. 22% inflation going back since COVID, 22, 25, that probably feels right if you're adding all that up. And so obviously that's going to have an impact on affordability, on everything. We've all been feeling this. We've all been feeling our dollars going less far because of inflation. So let's keep moving on here and take a look at what that means. Well, I'm curious with these prices here. So these are prices with falling prices or items that are falling prices right now. The greatest are actually smartphones. Used cars and trucks are coming down. Now, they were way up a few years ago, but they're coming back down. Toys and games and hobbies, televisions, airline fares, furniture, health insurance, appliances. These are the items that are going down right now. Here are the items that are going up, the fastest rising prices. Motor vehicle insurance, admission to sporting events. And so entertainment, sporting events and concerts and movies. Have you guys been feeling that? How much more expensive they are to go to a show or a concert or a sporting event? Hospital services are up. Postal delivery services, motor vehicle repair, dental services. Rent is up 5% this year. Personal care services and daycare is up 5%. So those are the fastest rising areas. All right. Now let's transition a little bit into how this is impacting the real estate industry. First chart here. Annual sales in the millions. So if you see this number, 23 was 4.1 million homes sold. Projected this year is to be about the same at 4.2 million homes sold. Now, you go back a few years, 2020 and 2021, we had 5.6 and 6.1. And what was the reason for so many home sales then? Well, interest rates were much cheaper then, right? Access to capital was a lot cheaper. Your monthly payment was going to be a lot cheaper. And as those interest rates have gone up, we've seen a significant dip in home sales the last few years. I mean, 6.1 down to 5%. We've seen roughly 20%, 25% of home sales drop up to 30% if you're looking over a 2-year period, from 6.1 million down to 4.1 million last year. And it's not just the buyers, it's not just because of the buyers who are not buying houses. It's because these interest rates have gone up. Sellers don't want to sell their homes. Not only has the housing prices gone up, so what they can buy for their money has gone up quite a bit, but also they're locked into 2, 3, 4%. We're going to get into those charts in a little bit here. And do you want to trade that up for an interest rate that might be twice as much? A lot of sellers have said no. So you've had low inventory. So we're kind of at this weird standstill. So here's where we are at from home prices. And when you see, or I'm sorry, from home sales. So when you see home sales not growing, when you see them dipping, then the overall economy is going to be sluggish, right? That's what makes sense. Housing is the main driver of the economy. So if housing is a little bit sluggish, then the economy is going to be sluggish, which makes sense with that chart we saw earlier, that we are either in a recession right now or likely heading into one here. Here's home sales monthly. You can see that going down year over year, slightly from 2023 to 2024. So there's been less home sales overall this year in 24 compared to 23. But here's the chart that is, still kind of a punch in the gut, right? Is that even though home sales are slowing down, even though interest rates are staying higher, we'll look at that here in a second, home prices are not going down. In fact, they're still going up. Now, certain part of the countries, they're going down, but here in the Cincinnati area, we've seen about 5% growth year over year. But here overall, you've seen home prices, just a few years ago in 2021, what this is the annual median home price in thousands. So this is a national chart. The annual home price in thousands was 297,000 in 2020, the annual median home price. Then it jumped all the way up to 351 in 21, a huge leap. Then all the way up to, what is that? Roughly maybe 380, 385 last year, then 390, and now we're at 398 this year. The long-term trend going back to 1989 is 4% growth. From 1989 through 2023, that's a 4% growth trend. But even though inflation is higher, even though interest rates are higher, home prices are still going up. Now you're seeing them level off, right? At the top of this chart here, they're not quite as high as they were, the leap from 2019 to 2020 and 2021, they are leveling off. And in certain areas of the country, I'm seeing this in Florida, in Texas, in California, certain places, these prices are going down. Here in the Midwest, we're still seeing them go up. And so overall, nationally, you're still seeing them go up, but they're flattening out a little bit. But it's still not down a lot. So that's where we're at home prices annually. Let's continue here. Home prices monthly, again, going up slightly year over year. You can see that the teal is 2024 versus the pinkish purple, whatever color you want to say that is, in 2023. And inventory, though, however, is starting to creep up. So monthly inventory in 2024 here is looking at 4 months supply of inventory. Now, a balanced market is 6 months supply of inventory. What that means is if no new inventory gets on the market, then everything will sell out in 6 months. So you see monthly inventory climbing up here in 2024. Again, this is nationally. Locally here, we're still at a month, maybe a month and a half supply of inventory. So here in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky market, we've continued to see very, very low inventory compared nationally. And the reason why is we've got affordable housing compared to a lot of these places nationwide. It's made our city an attractive place for people to move to. When you've got great city amenities and when you got a lot of good things going for you, you're centrally located, you've got professional sports team. You've got a great art scene, great culinary scene. Your weather's not, terrible. You get all 4 seasons here. In fact, a lot of people who've been living in areas who don't get the 4 seasons, when they move here, they actually really prefer. They're like, I actually want winter. Winter would be great. You know what else is great? Water. Water is great. You know what else is great? Greenery. Like where I'm at, everything is brown and dry and hot. So when I'm talking to a lot of people who are moving here from California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, they're like, bring on winter. But we're kind of in a sweet spot for winter, where you get the cooler weather, but you don't get a ton of snow. We don't get dumped on like, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York. We're right in the middle of the country. And so we kind of get right in the middle of the country weather, if that makes sense. Anyway, I digress. Inventory here locally has, is you see it going up nationally. Here locally, it is going up as well. It's just not at this 4.1 level. It's more at like 1.5 months of inventory, something like that. All right, new home starts. So this is the new single family home starts in thousands. And what you see, this paints a really good picture to help you guys understand where we're at and how we got here, because you had a ton of new home starts leading up to the Great Recession. Builders were building like crazy. Anybody could get a loan, so everyone was buying them. And you had a ton of inventory right before the Great Recession, and the housing market collapse. And then you had all this inventory on the market. And then from 08, for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, really, you had builders who were just scared. You had a lot of builders who went out of business, and you had a lot of builders who were like, I don't want to be left with all this inventory again. And so the necessary supply that we needed as a country to meet demand was not being hit for a dozen years. And so while we're higher now, we're back above that long-term average and we're getting closer to what we need, we're still not catching up to the amount of housing we actually need to get that balanced real estate market. And from this mega camp, Gary Keller said, they've looked at the housing starts for the next 4 years, because it takes a long time to develop land, to get all the permits, to get the utilities in the ground before you can actually start building houses. And they've looked at the next 4 years in terms of the housing starts, and we're still nowhere close to catching up to the demand that we need. So just this weird situation where we're still at low demand, but the affordability is really stretching everyone. We'll look at more charts on that. Housing prices keep going up, but interest rates are staying higher. It's just kind of a weird spot we're in from a housing market standpoint. Could a recession help this? Yeah, maybe, but also because housing prices have gone up so much. And when I say, can a recession help this, please, what I'm not saying is, do I want you to lose your job? I do not want people to lose their jobs. I don't want the economy to fail. I want the economy to be great. But what I'm saying is, can a recession help make a more balanced housing market? Potentially. The answer is potentially it can. And we'll look at some different scenarios in a little bit. But certainly I don't want to see a crash. I don't want to see people lose their jobs. I don't want to see unemployment get higher. Nobody wants that. It's not good for the economy or the country. But we're just in this weird limbo, because the other thing people have is all this equity in their houses. And so even if they did lose their job, a lot of people can refinance and tap into that equity. And so back here in 08 and 09, we saw a lot of foreclosures here, right? Investors who had cash, they made a killing here because you bought all these foreclosures at a deep discount with cash. Because people were getting foreclosed on. They didn't have that equity in their houses. They were buying, housing. There was very little equity in the houses they had. And so many people lost their house. Very, very sad. Right now, it's a weird spot because all this equity, if you've owned your house since pre-COVID, you've gained all this equity in the house. So even if you're not doing great financially, you can still kind of tap into that equity, which again is keeping that inventory tight, because people can stay in their home, which is ultimately is a good thing, but it's keeping that inventory tight. Okay, so new home sales and builder confidence. Their confidence went up in 20, but it's kind of come back down again. And the reason why builder confidence isn't as high, even though that demand is there and even though the supply is still low, is because we're just bumping into that affordability. Those interest rates are higher. And let's see if I can show. We'll come back to it. Actually, I just want to hit this slide really quick. Affordability where we're at right now, so this orange line is principal and interest of your house payment as a percent of income. Okay. Where we're at right now is at 35%. 32% was 2006, which that was leading into the Great Recession. 1981, we had crazy inflation. Interest rates got as high as 18%. So affordability was 49%. We're not at that level, but we're at 35%, which is the second highest since those 18% interest rates. And that's why builders' confidence is low. And that's why not a lot of home units are being sold, because it's just smashing people's affordability. Like, just bumping into like, yeah, I would like a house, but like, interest rates are where they are. Whoops, want to go back here, which is right here. Okay. So let's take a look at this chart. This is a really helpful chart. So like I said, back in 1980, 1981, you had rates as high as 16.63%. So we can at least be thankful we're not there, right? Rates aren't at 16%, but also everyone, we were living the high life when rates were down here as low as 3, 4, 2%, whatever. And that hit its lowest point in 2020 and 2021. That's why you had so many home sales there, because it's basically free money when you were buying a house then, right? And then it bumped up, and last year we hit 6.8. Here we're at 6.7. The Fed indicated that they were going to drop interest rates this year, but they didn't. And so they're just hovering right around here. Now, will interest rates go down by the end of 2024? We're in an election year. Is it feasible that we're going to see an interest rate drop to maybe try to stimulate the economy right before the election? I think, that's very feasible that could happen. I wouldn't put that past, politicians to try to do that, to try to give a bump in the economy right before people go to the polls. But where we're at is interest rates are staying right up here, 6.8, 6.7. Now, the historical average from 1990 through 2023 is about 6%. And if you include the 80s, where we had that high interest rate, you're at 7.74%. So we're kind of splitting the difference right now between those historical averages. So yes, it feels extremely high compared to where we were just a few years ago. But if you look back over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we're really about average right now. And rates could go up. It could be way worse, going back to early 80s, and affordability could get even tighter. Adam says, I'm sitting here trying to determine if I should sell my home within the next few months or springtime next year. Seems so much is in the air. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What will the election do? And I think historically speaking, if you look, you can even look at this chart right now and go back to different election years. Because a lot of people, I think, will stay put with an election coming up, because who knows, the different administrations have very different policies, and what kind of impact will that have? Well, if you look at the years of the elections here, 20, 16, 12, 8, the trend lines, 04, I think maybe in our head, it's potentially a little bit greater than what the actuality is. If you look at the years surrounding the election years for either mortgage rates, now don't get me wrong, there can be some changes, but I think more so trying to time the market and trying to predict an election is obviously really hard. And then what the election will do on the economy is harder. And so I think ultimately when you're making these decisions, you kind of just need to make the decision that's best for you and your family and your situation, especially if you have a longer term time frame. If your time frame is shorter, that can be harder. But I would say timing the market is always tough. And so what you need to kind of look at are, what are the economics right now and what could they be? Because yes, interest rates could go down and you could be like, great. But also interest rates could go back up. They could go up higher. There's no question they could go higher. If you look at this chart, you've got several years here where interest rates were higher than this average of 5.98 or 7.74. And the Fed told us this year that they were going to drop rates, but have they? No, they haven't. And then, you got to think through these different scenarios. If they drop the rates, what you're probably going to see is a lot of buyer activity come back on the market. People who've been waiting and sitting on the sidelines. What's that's going to do to home prices? That'll drive home prices up again. And they've kind of flatlined nationally, but here they're still going up. So they're slowing down. This year is roughly 4 or 5%. Last year was roughly about the same. um, versus we were seeing 10, 12% the previous few years. So, I mean, you got to think what's best for you got to look what's best for your family situation. It's really hard to time the market. No one has a crystal ball. Um, and if rates do go up, you know, you're going to be kicking yourself if you didn't sell and buy now. If rates go down, home prices will probably go up. So, timing is going to be tough. So, I don't know if that's the best. We're going to look at a few scenarios here about what could happen in the market going forward. But here's where the rates are. I think this is a helpful chart in particular because if again, if you're just comparing to a few years ago, you're like, I can never buy anything again. Everything's too expensive. And if you get a little scale here and realize, okay, here's where we are. It's kind of where it's been historically for 30, 40 years, just to get a little bit of context to understand what happens in the economy overall over a period of 20, 30, 40 years. And so, yes, I understand it feels high right now. And they can go down. Again, I wouldn't put it past them to drop, but also they said they were going to drop it 3 times this year and they really haven't. So who knows what they're going to do with rates. I think it's more about what can you afford now. If they do drop in the future, what's the saying in real estate? You can, marry the house, but date the rate. Because, you could buy, you can always refinance. There are a lot of new home builders that I've seen where they've been providing like a free refinance if rates do go down. So yes, I understand the rates, compared to half the rate a few years ago or 3.5%, it's really has an impact on your payment. And that's again why home sales have gone down. But rates, yeah, date the rate, marry the house is what I'm going to say there. All right, let's go back to, whoops. Oh my goodness. My StreamYard skills here are lacking. Okay, mortgage rates monthly. This is kind of the same chart, just in the line chart fashion. But yeah, they hit a low of 2.68 in December of 20. Affordability. So we just talked about that. Sides per agent. This is more real estate agent stuff, which basically says like, look, when the market is popping, a lot of agents get in. And when there is a recession, a lot of agents get out is what that chart says. Market volume per agent. That's basically saying, yeah, you guys don't need to see that as much. So that's basically Keller Williams saying like, you can do this. Mortgage universe. All right. This is really interesting to me, this slide. 76% of mortgages have rates of 5% or less. Wow. That's a big number. So again, this goes back to kind of the stagnation of the market and how much inventory you're seeing on the market. When you've got 76% of mortgages have rates of 5% or less, then you've got a lot of sellers who don't want to sell and jump on to a 6.5% rate, or 7%. Now, if it comes down a little bit, I think that will change because there's certainly life circumstances and things are backing up where people either need a bigger house or a smaller house, or they want to move closer to family, or they want to move to a different city, or they have a different job. But right here, this chart is saying 22% have 3% or less rates, 35% have between 3 to 4%, and 19% have 4 to 5%. You add all that up, and 76% have a mortgage 5% or less. Only 14% of people have a mortgage 6% or more. So that's a very interesting chart to look at. Now, homeowner equity. 86 million homeowners in the U.S., 38% of them own them outright. 38% of them own 50% of equity or more. So that's what I was saying before. You've got all these homeowners who have all this equity. What are you going to do with that? One thing, we had a team meeting here at Keller Williams yesterday, and one thing we were seeing was a lot of parents are potentially selling their house to their kids. We're seeing that. And again, that's keeping properties off the market because they're like, they've got all this equity in the market. And so their kids are having a hard time buying a house. So they're like, well, maybe we'll give you a deal. You'll be a buyer for us. And we love you because you're our kids. And so we'll go that route. Or we're seeing, parents who might have this equity and take out that, and they'll potentially allow maybe they'll create their own loan within the family, and they'll allow their kids to buy with cash and create their own loan within the family. So that's another thing that we're seeing because you've got all this equity raised. But 86 million homes, and basically 70, this is what we just said, 76% have rates of 5% or less, and also 76% own at least 50% of their home or own it outright. So only 24% of homeowners have less than 50% of equity in their house. It's a pretty remarkable chart there. So 76% of homeowners have at least 50% equity in their homes. That's a lot of people. So it's like, what's going to happen with this market? It's just kind of like standing still in a way, because people have that much equity in the house. So let's talk about a few different economic scenarios here. If there were to be a recession heading into third and fourth quarters of 2024 or 2025. All right, here's scenario number one. Scenario number one, no recession. So let's say unemployment stays below 5%. Let's say interest rates fall to 6%. They're at about 6.7 right now is what we saw. Home sales go up to about 4.5 million. We saw before they were at about 4.1, 4.2 million units on the year. So in this scenario would be defined by resilient labor market, which allows rates to be decreased before a recession sets in. The decline in rates will result in more home sales, but the recovery will be slow in housing as rates take time to come down. So rates come down kind of slow. You've got kind of slow growth here, and the recession's avoided. So that's economic scenario number one for 2025. Economic scenario number two, let's say there is actually a normal recession. And in this scenario, unemployment rises to 6 to 8%. Rates fall rapidly down to 5 to 6%, not just 6%. Home sales bump up because, again, those rates are coming down. So home sales bump up to 5 million instead of 4.5 million. So historically, falling home sales leads us into a recession, and rising sales leads us out. Again, housing is kind of the driver there. So if you drop the rates, more home sales, that pulls you out of the recession. So after 3 years of declines, the transition into a recession would trigger a more aggressive drop in rates from the Federal Reserve and stimulate the housing market to drive the growth of an economic recovery. So, how does this impact you? If we're actually heading into a recession, what that might mean is rates fall more rapidly, meaning, housing becomes a little bit more affordable. You're doing that to try to stimulate the economy. So that's kind of scenario number two. If you're looking forward into the trends and predicting what could happen at the end of 2024 or looking ahead to 2025, if we fall into a recession here, you could see rates falling more rapidly, which means housing becomes more affordable, which might be a good option for you, the buyer. Okay. And scenario number three, this is a banking recession. Now, it gets a little bit ugly here. Okay. Unemployment's rising all the way to 8 to 10%. In this scenario, something damages the banking system. It's creating a shock to lending. Home prices and home sales will fall despite low mortgage rates. So this is a territory you don't want to get in. This is more like 08, 07, 08 territory with the Great Recession. This happened in the Great Recession and the savings and loans crisis. And if you drop the rates down to 3 to 4%, you're still, that's not stimulating because people don't have jobs. And so unemployment's raising and you're back down to 4 million or less. So you don't want to get here, right? You don't want to get into a banking recession. This is bad for everyone. So those are potential, in these scenarios, you're not looking at what could happen if rates rise. And that is maybe a fourth scenario that I would want to see. But if rates rise, more than likely, you're going to see less home sales as well. So probably, what's likely is looking at this either rates falling slowly, with no recession scenario, or a normal recession and rates falling a little bit more rapidly to 5 to 6%. These are kind of, again, disclaimer involved, but these are kind of Keller Williams research. What are you looking at these different scenarios for 2025? How would that impact you as a buyer or seller in the coming year? These are kind of different scenarios you can play out. So if you have any more questions about that, obviously we'd love to talk to you about what that could mean for you. Obviously real estate is local, looking at the comps of your neighborhood, understanding what the market is doing in any given month, looking at the most recent data. That's what we're trying to provide for you here. I'm trying to give you a more global context in this video today, but certainly we can narrow this down to your specific situation, whether you're buying or selling, your neighborhood, and the most recent data here locally, not just this national context. But I'm trying to give you context overall what could happen as we're predicting and kind of forecasting 2024 and the rest of 2024 and 2025. Okay. Last few slides I want to hit here. Just so I did this video on this last week, but again, I'm sure you're hearing a lot about this NAR settlement. And I just want to simplify it here. Again, these slides are kind of made for real estate agents, but I'm going to read them to you so you understand what's going on. But here it is simplified. The settlement required practice changes that will be implemented in the realtor MLSs and any non-realtor MLSs that opt into the NAR settlement. According to the National Association of Realtors, the practice changes take effect August 17th. Maybe not till September 16th, but they've taken effect here locally. While the settlement is clear in what it says, please know that there are still many questions about how these changes will work in practice. That is for sure. You got a lot of people scrambling right now. MLSs are still working through how these changes will be implemented and what best practices will emerge. Many opportunists will jump to quick conclusions and provide their opinions disguised as knowledge. Be aware this can be both legally dangerous and professionally irresponsible. I will say, in watching this in the last week, all the brokers kind of like, here's our advice, but they're all kind of like waiting to see who's going to screw up and where the first lawsuits are going to be. But from a buyer standpoint, here's what I want you guys to know. As a buyer so now you must use a buyer representation agreement before showing a home that includes these 4 things. Number 1, you must disclose the amount or rate of compensation you'll get. So again, this is a slide built for an agent, but agents must disclose what compensation they'll get on this agreement. The agent's compensation amount must be written into the agreement as a percentage or dollar amount and cannot be open-ended. For example, you can't say on the agreement, the buyer broker compensation shall be whatever amount the seller is offering to the buyer. No, this has to be understood and written into the agreement up front before you make an offer on the house, before you can even tour a house. Number 3, an agent cannot receive compensation for brokerage services from any source for more than the amount or rate agreed to in your buyer representation agreement. So let's say you negotiate with your agent for 2.5%, but the seller is willing to give 3. The agent can't actually get that 3. They can only get 2.5%. Now, again, on our team, we still do 3% here. That's what we do up front. That's what we know we're worth, and we can go through our entire value proposition to you. But we do 3% here. You just can't get more for that. And number 4, you must include a conspicuous statement that broker fees and commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. So that's on the buyer agreement. It says this is fully negotiable. And if you want to pay your agent 2.5% or 2% or 1.5% or no percent, from our team, personally, we say you can go find that agent. We do 3%, but it is fully negotiable. It's just this is kind of what we do. If you want to negotiate that down with someone else, feel free to work with another agent. We're fine with that. All right. One other thing here. Okay, this is for sellers. So the NAR settlement simplified for sellers. Point number 1, cooperative compensation, that just means paying the buyer's agent, can no longer be advertised on the MLS. Sellers can still decide to specifically offer cooperative compensation, and it can be marketed any place other than the MLS, such as in a newsletter, text message, or a broker's or agent's own website. You can't market other brokerages. You cannot market other brokerages cooperative compensation for their listings on your or your own broker's website. So you can still market it, just not on the MLS. If you're a seller who's wanting to pay a commission to a buyer's agent to try to get more buyers to your house, you can still do that. You just can't do it on the MLS. Second point here, sellers can still offer a concession to buyers in the MLS, and that concession can be used to pay the buyer's agent should the buyer choose. So this is kind of a workaround. The concession offered from the seller to the buyer can be noted in the public comment section of your MLS listing. So you could say, I'll offer a concession to you, Mr. Buyer, for your closing costs. And then the buyer could say, well, we'll take that money for the closing costs and we'll pay our agent with it. That's one kind of workaround for how to do this and how to somewhat market it on the MLS. And the final point here is agents must disclose in listing agreements, buyer representation agreements, and pre-closing disclosures that broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. So again, all of this is trying to be upfront with you, the public, knowing all of this is fully negotiable on the front end. Make sure you understand that on the front end. All right. You've probably seen a million things about this, but I'm just trying to make that clear on the front end. So there is your market update for 2024. Hope that helps you guys. I want to go over one other article here before we wrap up today's YouTube live. And that is this headline. I'm coming off a sore throat, so sorry for trying to, for having to keep drinking here. Okay. We talked about this connected communities and what's going to be happening here in Cincinnati. And this article in particular stood out to me, not just because of this new division. Well, let me just go through it, and then we'll kind of talk through what I think is going to happen locally, what we'll see a lot more of. And I found this move by Dries. Dries is the #2 largest home builder here locally. Sold several of their homes this year. They build a really good product. They're family owned. I like Dries Homes a lot. But they're launching this new division. But let's get into this article because, like I said, there's a few interesting things here. One of Cincinnati's largest home builders, they're building a new standalone division with aims of doubling its construction of townhomes in the region over the next few years. Doubling, that's a lot, okay? Fort Mitchell, Kentucky-based Dries Homes has appointed Scott Dries as president of the Cincinnati area townhome division. Dries most recently served as sales manager for the home builder's Indianapolis operations. By the way, I've met the Dries family. One thing I like about them is they do have family members involved in the business, but you have to go off and work in different parts of the operation before you get promoted. And I just think if you're a family-owned business, which is something I want with my children in the future, that's great. Like you got to go kind of, you got to kind of go earn it before you get handed the reins. I like that. The division will launch with a previously awarded project to build 16 townhomes at Covington's Central Riverfront development. That project can be kind of like a beacon of what we can do in urban areas. So this is an important quote I want to point out to you, that they're looking to build in urban areas. This one down in Covington is on the IRS site, right down by the river. They're going to be building 16 townhomes. I think they are, I want to say they're right here on 4th Street. But let's continue on in this article, and I want to say why that's important. Okay. Townhomes are having a bit of a moment right now. Starts for single-family attached housing across the country grew 45% in the first quarter of 2024. That's a lot, 45% starts. Compared to the first quarter of 2023, according to federal data, they make up nearly 18% of all single-family housing starts in the U.S., the highest market share on record dating back going to 1985. All right, so I want to, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tie a bow on this whole, talk, okay? Because going back to affordability, this chart, going back to 1981, right? This when affordability was super high. And mortgage rates were super high back in the 80s. I just think it's very interesting that we're building more townhomes now because of affordability. The highest amount shared on record going back to 1985. And again, going back to, yes, affordability right here. We're at 35% now. We had 32 in 06, and we have 49% affordability. Again, this is percent principal and income as a percent of income. So why are companies like Dries building townhomes more than ever before? Affordability. I just think this is really interesting. Why? Well, let me keep reading, and we'll kind of connect the dots here. Dries Homes had nearly 600 housing starts in Greater Cincinnati last year, of which around 150 were attached townhomes, mostly in its suburban subdivisions. The home builder expects to construct more than 300 townhomes annually by its centennial. So they're going to double, right? The endeavor will give us new focus to hopefully set our eyes on some new projects that we might not have pursued before. Okay, why are they going after new projects they haven't pursued before? Dries pointed to affordability issues, lack of starter level housing options, and fundamental changes in living preferences as homeowners seek low maintenance, higher density lifestyles. This is the key paragraph that I want to point out. Why might someone choose a townhome versus a single family home with a yard? Affordability. There's a lack of starter level housing options because these single family homes, people are getting priced out for first time home buyers. And people like to live in a more dense area. People like to have walkability in their neighborhood. A younger generation likes to be able to walk to the local bar, to the local restaurant, to the local coffee shop. And they like low maintenance. They don't want to do as much yard stuff. They want to be able to maybe travel more. And so if I have a townhome and the HOA covers mowing the lawn or whatever, any of the external maintenance, I don't have to do that. Great. I don't want to take care of that stuff. I'd rather do other things with my time. So Dries is saying, we're going to bet on that. We're going to bet, and we're going to build more townhomes because we think there's demand here. A townhome from Dries currently starts around $300K. The home builder expects that price to fall as it develops more focused products and builds on economies of scale. So, first-time home buyer might have been around 150 to 200 pre-COVID, but now that first-time home that's decent is really more in that like 250 to 300, even 350 range. And so Dries is trying to get the townhomes at 300 now for something brand new. I'm talking first-time home buyers for something that's old and not in great shape. Okay, a brand new townhome, and they're trying to, if they build more, get that price down even lower. So this is smart. I think they're targeting a demographic, a growing demographic of first-time home buyers who are having a hard time finding single-family homes, but might want a low-maintenance option in a higher density area. And tying again even more to the city's plan. Additionally, the adoption of upzoning initiatives, including the City of Cincinnati's Connected Communities overhaul, has opened up pockets of undeveloped urban real estate previously overlooked by large home builders. So where can Dries and Fisher and MI Homes and Ryan Homes, where if you go on their maps right now and you look at their single family homes, where are they building? It's basically all outside of the I-275 loop, pushing north towards Dayton, pushing south towards Lexington, pushing east, towards Athens or like out past Batavia. But this connected communities idea is where the zoning laws have changed and you can fit townhomes in these areas. So this said that had a great impact on our decision. There seem to be more and more opportunities every day, Drew said. Now we've been training our land team to be able to look for those deals. They were more trained to look for single family deals, which is what? A large parcel of land. You've got to have land for all these single family homes, but you need to be able to look for different features in land and different types of deals, knowing what product to put on it, townhomes rather than 100-foot wide single family lots. So now you can do townhomes or row houses, and you don't need a huge lot. You don't need all the parking. So you're going to see builders like Dries building more inside of the city because there's different opportunities that are coming now from this connected communities. Acquiring the land is one thing. Developing a pipeline of townhome projects is another, and it takes still more adaptation from the home builder. Buyers interested in building a detached single-family home typically come in on the front end and contract with Dries Homes as the builders. Townhomes more often need to be built before someone will buy them. So, single-family builder comes in and they meet with Dries ahead of time, but a townhome, they want to see it built, and then they'll buy it. They need to see it. They need to feel it. So you need to be strategic about what product you're putting out there because there's an inherent risk in building without a buyer. Yeah. Having this division allows us to focus to make sure we're getting that right. It isn't just about taking on inventory either. Dries Homes must become trade-centric, according to Dries. You need to have to scale so that your trades can grow with you. You need to have steady flow. Too often our trade partners have gaps in time where they're either slammed or go without work. Having a focus on this division, we can get even flow of production for them. So I think this is smart by Dries Homes. They're taking, they're looking at this zoning change and they're looking at the kind of the demographics and the affordability. And they're saying, hey, we've got an opportunity here. Let's get smart on this. Let's get learnings because it's a different kind of division. Like you got to look for different things. You've got to build a different product. We've got to partner with our trade partners differently. So I'm just going to be keeping a close eye on this. I wanted to share that with you because I thought that was very interesting. I think you'll see more product like this throughout the city to come in Cincinnati with this new connected communities. And you're seeing it already. They're going to build kind of their feature product in Covington first, so you can kind of take a look at that. So I definitely want to get down there and take a look as they're building that out. All right, guys, that's probably going to wrap it up for us today. Hey, we're getting close to the start of the season here. One thing I thought was hilarious in looking at this Joe Burrow here is that the this first comment, the economy of Cincinnati is on his shoulders. And yeah, you know, people want to come here because of Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow, win us a bowl, get us all the people to move here to Cincinnati, and I'll be all for it. And then when Jamar gets that new contract, I'll be his real estate agent. Jamar, I'm telling you, if you still need hats, I know you're still on Hat Watch, hit me up. I'm happy to give you as many hats as you need. And once Mike Brown opens up that bag and pays you $40 million a year, I would love to be your real estate agent of choice. I'll help you buy a house over by Joe Burrow on the east side. We'll figure it out, man. We'll figure it out together. Have your people call my people. I'm going to be down with Paul Dayton Jr. at the live show today at the Banks, at BetMGM and Nation Burger. So if you guys are around town and heading down for either the Green Day concert or Smashing Pumpkins or the Bengals game, hit me up down there. Would love to see you guys. Thanks so much. Be sure to like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys, and we will see you in the